called Hahn. Can't say the name of the city I was born. There's the street I was born on, down there south of the tracks in that area, just right off from Prairie Street. My grandpa got killed down on the 2nd Street. He worked on the railroad, and the first Saturday that they decided not to work Saturdays on the shops, he and 3 of them left the shops and was coming down to get on the interurban, and they crossed the street at Harrison and 2nd Street, and 3 of them walked across there, and some guy got in a hell of a hurry. He come down there and went around another car on the intersection, and 2 of the guys with my granddad jumped ahead and Grandpa jumped back, and the guy that was driving the car hit Grandpa and knocked him clear across the intersection and killed him. And that was the end of Grandpa there, and so I didn't get to know him very well. Well, the earliest memory was kind of flighty, because when we were in town, Dad's still working, still had the electric company, that he was the main man in town for the whole company. So our business was right on Main Street, and I could play in the middle of Main Street at that time because I wasn't very big or very old. But the thing that I remember down there was all of a sudden there was a big something going on Main Street. I know there was something going on. And Mom wanted me to come in, and I didn't want to come in. She wanted me in the house, and I didn't want to go in the house. And she finally come out, and she grabbed me and hauled me in the house. And we no more got in the house, and I heard the guns blow. And boy, by that time then, she let go of me, and I was back out on the street. But by that time, they were talking about the shooting there in the middle of Main Street. And the one guy shot at the other guy, and he nicked him, but he didn't kill him. But then he got on his horse and rode away. And that was one of the things I remember the loudest. And I can remember that all my life. That was the shooting on Main Street, by gosh. That was something to remember. Schools was all right. I got along all right with the schools. I never had any problem with them. The only place I'd had any fallout at all was in the 4th grade. And I'll tell you about that after you shut the machine off. I seen Buffalo Bill out in Oregon, in La Grande. Now, La Grande, Oregon was the tail end of the people moving west way back when was moving there, and the La Grande, Oregon got the end of the wagons that they all went. That's where when it was going west, that's where they always pointed for there to break up before they spread out in Oregon. Well, I came home, and of course, when I got off the train down here, I'll tell you about the train later, but I went up, got off there, and I got out here, and my wife wasn't here, and they was having one of them blowouts up at the Elkhart to raise money to bring them back. So I got the car, and I drove uptown. I was going to get my wife. I didn't want to wait. I parked right in front of the Elkhart Theater, and I was going in after him. A guy come running out and informed me I couldn't park there. And he said, "Oh, it's Ed. Hi, kid." And I had to stop and talk to him for a while because he's a buddy of mine. And then I told him what I was doing there. He said, "Leave it set right there." He said, "Nobody will touch that car until you come back." He said, "I'll watch it too." So that's when I went into the theater and told them what I wanted. Well, then they steered me down into one side and down. Then I had to talk to somebody, and then they had to master of ceremonies was running thing. So they took me on the stage and told him what it was all about. He said, wait a minute, don't let him get away. And he held me, kept talking, and he worked me into this system. And then he said, his wife's here, I think. He said, is Marie Hahn in the group? And I could hear her. She was upstairs in the balcony. I could hear her voice real easy. And then he let out a yell and said, well, we got your husband home. And he said, Ed, come out here. And then there was a scream in the balcony. And then she was on her way. And she come out of that balcony, and I don't know how she made it, because I met her in the aisle downstairs in the middle of the summer out there. That's when I met my wife coming out with us. We come out of there and went out. And they were still watching my car for me, too. I've only got one story about Prohibition. Out here west of town, where the tunnels are, there used to be a filling station sitting right there. And the guy that run the filling station, and it was just gas and oil, that's all they had there then. But we had people coming in and out, but there's only 2 or 3 guys hanging around there now and then, you know, pretty regular evenings and stuff. And every once in a while somebody'd come out there and they'd have a car, and they wanted to get their car to South Bend, and they couldn't go, and could one of you guys take this thing to South Bend for me? And, well, sure, we could. Well, he said, I'll pay you for it. So he'd give him the keys in the car, give him some money, and tell him where to go with it, and away we go, take the thing over to South Bend, drive down that one-way street and into that garage. That's where it belonged. They'd tell us how to get on the bus to come back. And we always wonder how they got the car back. We never knew, but we always got the car to South Bend pretty well. But they didn't let the same guy do it all the time. Every time somebody took a car to South Bend, it'd be a different fella. The Depression. Well, we lived out there in Jimtown area, and we didn't have a damn thing to go on, but we had enough land that we could raise some stuff to eat. And I think about that because I had been raising rabbits, and we had chickens, and we had our garden. So we ate. We didn't go places, and we didn't go spending money or anything like that because we didn't have it. But we got through, and I wore overalls to school, and nobody complained because other people was wearing overalls too, and we got by real well on that thing. Used to play cards a lot. I belonged to a poker club for a while, so I like to play cards. That was something that I really liked to do, and as long as I could see the cards, I was enjoying it. I always liked to tell a story about that, now that you mention it. While I was in the service, and one of them nights when we were sitting there in the barracks, a weekend we couldn't get to town or anything, so we had a card game going. And I come down and I sat in it and I had $2, and we were playing blackjack. And I said, I'll play my $2. And hell, I hit a blackjack. And I had $4. Well, the guy next to me said, I'll tap it. And I beat him. So I had $8. And then I had to give him some money, and another guy had enough money to get into it. So we had 2 guys against me. And I beat him. And then I hit a hot streak. And I'll never know what happened. I turned blackjack 3 times, and I hit 21 4 times in that deal. That night I won $600. And I'll tell you, I'd never have figured out yet how it happened. But that was my biggest win. But I like to play poker. But one of the guys told me, he said, Ed, you know, he said, these guys don't like to play cards with you too well. And I said, what's the matter? Well, he said, you keep winning. And I said, well, that's what I'm there for. He said, I know. He said, they know it, but he said, you do it so consistently. But that's the way, what I like to do there. Now that kind of stuff, I can't see to do it. It was the first time, this was back 1924, I think it was, when they opened up. And that was the first show that they had in there. And I had to scramble to earn the money to go to it, but I earned the 2 bits so I could go to the show. And that's what that was all about. It cost me 2 bits to get in, and I peddled handbills downtown and stuff to get 2 bits to go. And that got me into the first show. Oh, it was fantastic. That show was fantastic down there. It was a magnificent thing for so many years. It was just one of these things that for a long time people was going there for it. Sam Weiner was on Main Street at that time, right north of where the post office was there, in the alley and the Dodge, and then Sam Weiner's junkyard, right there on Main Street, before you got to where Paul Thomas is. And when I lived uptown there, and one day I come down the alley and there was a darn car battery sitting there in the alley. Boy, there's nobody around. I nailed onto that battery, and I took it around and I sold it to Sam Weiner. And I got enough money out of that me and Everett Rogers went to the show on Saturday. We had enough money to get in and get a box of popcorn. And I thought, boy, that's just something else. And end of the week, I will go to something out there in the alley, and there's another battery. I wonder where those things are coming from. I nailed onto that battery, and I took it around and I sold it to Sam. And got Everett, and we went to the show. And I think we had about 5 shows with that battery, and Sam Weiner give us the money for the battery, and then along the end of the week it'd be sitting out there in the alley, and instead of us stealing anything from him, we just sell it to him. And he never said anything about that. And I was quite old before I finally threw my thick skull of what was going on. But by that time Sam was gone. I'd told his grandsons and his great-grandsons about that story all.